Let's look at some of the metrics and stats, right? I just wanted to kind of put out some numbers to give a perspective of how threats are increasing, security threats are increasing year over year. I know there are a lot of stats and metrics available, but these are very few. But no matter which stats you take up, the message is clear. The threats are increasing day by day, that too exponentially. If you look at the weekly attacks per organization number itself, right, they are going up by 50%, almost 50% every year. Depending on the industry, it could be slightly on the higher side or could be on the lower side. But on an average, you're looking at 50% increase in the weekly attacks. That is huge. For ransomware attacks, if you look at it, in 2016, every 40 seconds, there was a ransomware attack. By 2021, every 11 seconds, we started seeing a ransomware attack. That is like fourfold increase in 5-year span, which is again huge. Organizations need to be ready to kind of protect their environments against this threats, right? Ever increasing threats. The other number I wanted to kind of quickly call out here, right? 43% of cyber attacks are aimed at small businesses. Why is this important? Earlier, hackers, they were targeting large enterprise organizations. In 2021, after Colonial Pipeline incident, government started getting involved. In 2021, basically, there was a huge disruption in the hackers on the hackers infrastructure when government got involved. That's when they redirected their focus to small businesses where they can go under the radar without government organizations getting involved. And only 14% of them are equipped to defend themselves. That is where we are seeing a lot of success from an attacks perspective. The other couple of stats I want to kind of quickly point out is frequency of attacks. 66% of organizations, they experienced cyber attack in the past 12 months. It's like almost like 2/3 of the every organization has faced with attacks. And 69% say they are the cyber attacks are becoming more targeted. What that means is the attacks are becoming more sophisticated. Okay, so that is from a threat perspective, right? How the threats are increasing. From a cost perspective, it's the same story. The costs are going exponentially high as well. So the average cost of a single ransomware attack is $1.85 million. So that's huge, right? Based on the number that I was saying earlier, how the number of ransomware attacks are increasing, the costs are piling up. So as a graph mentioned, the damages are basically because the threats are increasing, the damages are increasing as well, right? So you can see the graph, it's exponentially going up. The growth of the cybercrime at the same time, right? From 2015 to 25, it is almost going up from 3 trillion to 10.5 trillion, which is a staggering amount. And the other number I wanted to kind of call out is organizations are taking 197 days on an average to discover a breach. So the threat actors are living in the in somebody's in some organization's infrastructure for 200 days without anybody detecting. As you can see, if you detect a breach within 30 days, your cost of the breach would be $3 million. But anything beyond 30 days, it would be $4.25 million. That is kind of expected because the more number of days the hacker is in your system, he has access to more sensitive data at that point. And the third metrics I want to kind of present here is the crime prices, how the cyber crime prices are going down. If you really look at it, it is becoming so cheap to get access to some of this information, right? Whether it's stolen username, passwords, or compromised PCs. It's so cheap for a hacker to get and buy this information. The obviously the crime prices and the cyber attack costs, they are inversely proportional. As the prices are going down, more and more attackers they can afford the information, and then they start doing more and more attacks. So the gist of whatever the landscape that I provided is to kind of give you a perspective saying that, okay, they are going up for various reasons, and organizations need to be ready to protect themselves. In this section, as I mentioned, we will talk about some of the attack vectors. What is a attack vector, right? Attack vector is nothing but a path for a hacker to exploit your cybersecurity vulnerabilities, any vulnerabilities that you have in your IT landscape. It's a path for them to exploit those, right? There are many attack vectors that attackers use. Some of them I listed out here. Some of them are very sophisticated attack vectors, while some of them are not so sophisticated, right? Like weak credentials, insider threats. These are not technically sophisticated attacks, but we still need to protect our organizations against these. Similarly, there are some sophisticated attack vectors, which are like session hijacking, man-in-the-middle attacks, such kind of, right? Whatever solution that we are leveraging, whatever tools that we are leveraging, we need to have protection against all these attack vectors. At the end of the day, even if you have a gap in one of these areas, your organization will be compromised. So we'll talk about the security tools that Microsoft provides against all these attack vectors. Next, I want to kind of go through this four-step process that typically hackers use, right? We call it as like a kill chain model. What this means is basically how attackers get access to your environment and what is their end goal. So it starts with the exposure, right? Every IT environment has this exposure points, if you will, right? Whether it's vulnerabilities, maybe your VMs are not patched with the latest updates, or maybe some insecure configuration. The services that you are leveraging, they are not properly secured, whether it's web applications or databases, whatnot, right? So there could be some misconfigurations which attackers can exploit, and things like that, right? Exposed credentials or compromised users. These are the exposure points that attackers can use. Basically, they leverage the attack vectors that I kind of went through in the previous slide to go through these exposure points and ultimately get access to one of these areas within your environment, right? It could be access to your virtual machines or web applications or data stores or credentials, whatnot, right? Once they get the access, that's when their journey starts in your organization, right? The next point is basically they go through this something called lateral movement. This is where when I was referring that data breach, right? It takes 200 days for a data breach to be identified on an average. During this time, the attackers will be patiently waiting in your environment, trying to see which workloads they have access or which systems they have access. How can they leverage some of the privilege escalations to escalate the access to the credentials that they already have. They go through all this to kind of get access to your more secured systems or more the critical data of your organization. So they go through this lateral movement, they get access to more virtual machines, more applications, more data stores. Once they get access to the critical data, then they get into the action phase. That is where they will start doing data exfiltration. They start downloading the data from your environment, or they will deploy some ransomwares, basically to extract some money out of the organizations, or they some attackers, they might just abuse the resources. They might delete some of the data. They could do anything at that point, right? Because they have a lot of control over your environment. That is the action stage. So this is a 4-step process that a hackers go through, right? I want to just kind of explain that in a perspective of a use case. How do this 4-step process work, right? In here, I will go step by step. I'll take a simple example on how the threat gets originated and where it ends. And I'll call out some of the Microsoft security tools to protect your environment at each stage, right? That is called defense in depth. So we do not, when we are talking about protecting your environment, we need to have this defense against each stage. You cannot just say, okay, I am going to protect only my endpoints. No, that's not going to help, right? So you need to protect your endpoints as well as the threat is moving, laterally moving across your environment. You need to have protection for other workloads as well. So in this case, typically, let's say attackers, they use this attack vector, phishing attack vector, right? They send an email either by not aware of phishing email, or by mistake, the user either opens an attachment or clicks an URL which comes with the email. Depending on whether it's an attachment or click the URL click, they might install application or a malware or a Trojan in your environment, right? They will start exploiting that vulnerability that they just got access to. Once they have either compromised device or compromised credentials, then they install a command and control center from which they persistently try to move laterally in your environment in the 3rd step. That is where reconnaissance and privilege escalations are coming, right? So they continuously monitoring what systems you have, what workloads you have, these compromised devices or credentials, what access do they have on these workloads. So that's basically they go through this privilege escalation and recon. And then finally, they end up accessing your shared resources, the data part of it, and then they start taking action. So as you can see at the bottom of this slide, Microsoft provides these different defender tools. We will talk about a different set of defender variations of defender tools that Microsoft provides. It protects you at each one of these stages, right? Defender for endpoint, for Office, it will protect from the phishing emails, for example, right? And then Defender for endpoint, it will protect your endpoints. Defender for identity, when the user gets access and trying to do a privilege escalation attacks or something, then Defender for identity will protect from those kind of attacks. And then towards the end, data would be protected. In this case, we are talking about email and SharePoint data, which would be protected by your Defender for Office 365 or Microsoft Cloud App Security. So there are different various Defender flavors, Defender tool flavors that Microsoft provides, as I mentioned earlier, right? So you need to protect your environment across all these attack vectors. That's where Microsoft has done a fabulous job of developing these security tools to protect your IT infrastructure. So this is the XDR platform that Microsoft provide the tools for. XDR is nothing but extended detection and response. Typically, when it comes to security, right, there are 2 parts to it. One is protection, versus detection. So first of all, everybody need to have you need to have a security posture management in place, which is protecting all your workloads across the board, right? That is your protection. You want to have, obviously, everybody wants to have 100% protected workloads, right? Whatever we do at the end of the day, there are still some vulnerabilities that attackers will exploit. So once you kind of have the protection in place, even if with all the protection in place, if the attackers are able to get into your infrastructure, that's when detection will come in, right? So the sooner that you detect a threat, the easier for you to mitigate it and the less expensive it is for you from a cost perspective, right? So Microsoft Defender tools provide you both capabilities. From a protection perspective, of course, there are so many other services that Microsoft provides, but what Defender gives you is um, creating policies to establish your security posture management that I was talking about, right? How do you create policies? How do you enforce those policies to protect your workloads? That is what Defender tools provides, right? Across all the workloads. That is a posture management, which is protection part of it. The detection part of it is where basically these tools have built-in AI ML to see the behavioral analysis. They go through the behavioral analysis, and of course, being Azure being such a huge platform, they get these billions of signals every hour. They collate all the information, they crunch those numbers, crunch the behaviors, and then protect your workloads, saying that, okay, if they see any anomaly in the user behavior, or for that matter, right, any endpoint, if 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 they see any anomalies, they quickly uh, alert us. That is a detection component of the Defender. So Microsoft kind of broadly branded all their security tools under Defender. There are two categories of Defender tools. One is M365 Defender to defend your M365 workloads, and then there is a Azure Defender to defend your Azure workloads. Under M365, you have again 4 flavors of Defender: Defender for identity, Defender for O365, Defender for cloud apps, and Defender for endpoint. So the 4 um, pillars that you see: identity, email, apps, devices, you have one Defender variation to protect all this. On the right, for the Azure Defender, you have only one Azure Defender which defends all your workloads which are deployed in Azure, whether it's servers, databases, applications, containers, so on and so forth. Right? There are many other workloads that it gives you protection and defense against um, attacks, that Azure Defender, right? And finally, Microsoft is also providing us this Azure Sentinel, which is a SIEM and SOAR tool. All the information that we have from these different Defender products, we can ingest into the Azure Sentinel to give organizations a single pane of glass view about your security, how your security posture is, and if there is any attack, as we seen earlier, right? So the attack moves from one stage to another, one workload to another workload. With the Defender, you will have that siloed view for that particular workload. But when it comes to Azure Sentinel, it correlates all the data from these different Defender products, and then gives you one single pane of glass view about the threat itself, right? It not only gets the data from the defenders, it can also ingest the data from third party or multi-cloud. Let's say if you have AWS or on-prem workloads, where you can ingest the data into Azure Sentinel, and Azure Sentinel can correlate the threats that are coming from your other clouds or on-prem and Azure and give you a single pane of glass view. Similarly, third party, when I say third party, you can also ingest data from third party appliances like firewalls, third-party firewalls, or any kind of appliances, right? It can also ingest. That is the beauty of Azure Sentinel, right? You can use Azure Sentinel as your SIEM and SOAR tool for all your security needs. So on a high level, this is, I know that it's a lot. On a high level, this is what Microsoft XDR platform is providing us. Now, I'll just go through some of the HANU security services that we provide. So what are the security engineering services that HANU provides for protecting your organization from all these threat actors, right? We broadly categorized into four types of services. One is security posture improvement services. This is where establishing the security posture and continuously improving your security posture is very, very critical. That is where we provide these services, right? As part of this service, we do the security assessment. We identify what are the gaps in your security posture. We will work with you. We will strategize how can we improve your security score. Once we identify the remediation, we not only do the manual remediation, we also leverage our automation to basically bulk remediation. If we have to remediate at a bulk level, we have some of the automation built into that remediation process itself. So that is the security posture improvement services that we HANU provides. The second one is security tools consolidation, right? So this is one thing lately we are seeing a lot of interest from our clients. According to one of the surveys, 72% of the organizations, they are using more than 15 plus security tools to protect their environment. So that is huge. When you have so many tools from so many vendors, you can imagine the challenges that you have to go through, right? Whether it's from a cost perspective or management perspective, or even when there is these tools might be excellent in what they are doing, but they will be isolated. You will have only siloed view when it comes to different tools, right? So let's say if there is email security tool that you are using, you will be seeing only the threats that are coming through the email, how we are protecting your email against the threat, right? Once it gets into the system, it will not give you a view of, okay, you got the threat, but how the threat got propagated, which other workloads are compromised. You will not get that view if you have so many tools. In order for you to have that kind of view, single view, you need to have less number of security tools. That's where most of our clients are focusing on reducing their number of security tools, consolidating their number of security tools. Preferably in the Microsoft, right? So when it comes to Microsoft, the number of tools will get reduced, and all the Microsoft tools, they leverage the same control pane, control view, right? So the way you do the threat detection or the way you do the threat hunting, it is uniform across all the Defender variations. So you are basically once you get used to one Defender, you will have the same. You don't have to go through a learning experience experiencing the other tool. But if the tools are from multiple vendors, there will be a lot of learning curve when you are leveraging those tools. So if you could the organization can consolidate into security tools, that brings out their management costs and whatnot, the overheads for the tools, right? It will come down drastically. And then once we kind of consolidate the security tools, we also work on the Sentinel integration, where we will provide the single pane of glass view for their security posture and threat analysis. The third set of services are security architecture services. This is where if organization are starting their journey or they already did something in Azure, but they want to revisit their security practices from scratch, we will provide our best practices. Our best practices are based on three core pillars: security by design, uh, defense in depth, and zero trust. Those are the three core pillars that we used when we created these best practices. So we bring these best practices to set up your security posture management and implement the security standards that your organization need, right? We also bring in guardrails specific to the industry as well. We work a lot in healthcare, in manufacturing. If it is a healthcare, we have a lot of expertise in HIPAA and high trust. We bring in all that experience to provide those guardrails for industry-specific compliance requirements or security requirements. That is where our security architectures services come in play. And the final, last but not the least, is DevSecOps and automation services. Across all these three other services, we will leverage automation as much as possible. For example, in cloud architecture services, we leverage automation to do the deployments. All our deployments have baked in security controls as part of IAC that we IAC practice that we develop. Even when we are deploying the deploying your environment using IAC through DevOps, we also have DevSecOps, like the way you use it for your applications, DSAT and SSAT tools. We have tools that we leverage for infrastructure as code DevOps as well. So security is built in your DevOps pipelines as well. So at the end of the day, we keep the security central to all our deployments using one of these services. Next one is basically quickly I want to run through this case studies that we worked on with some of these organizations. Basically, the services that we provided, the services I just mentioned, those are the services that we leveraged to deploy in these organizations. So Church and White is a manufacturer of home products. The challenge that they have is basically they're already in Azure, and then they realized their security score is very low. Obviously, being security score low means none of the CISOs will be happy with it, right? So they came to us asking for help. How can they improve their security score, right? That's when we got involved. In Hanu, we have our own in-house developed tool, which is called AZ Guard, to do the security assessment that we leverage, right? So I'll talk about some of the salient features of the AZ Guard when we talk about the offer, the security assessment offer that we have. But we leverage our tool, identified, and then we categorized into different domains, right, where they have gaps. And based on the priority, we started meticulously remediating it. At the end, initial score, they were at 43% after the remediation. We got them up to 60% within a couple of months. That is just the beginning, right? So it's a continuous process. So as long as we are with our clients, we continuously improve their security. So it's an ongoing process that we work with our clients. In the next case, we worked with Teach for America. They have this 2-year migration journey that they embarked upon. In order for them to go through this journey, they want to focus everything on automation. and they want to have a best class security posture before they start migrating any of their workloads, right? So that's where they came to us for our security best practices, security architecture services. So we designed their landing zone with all the security best practices. We baked in all the security controls into the automation IAC. So all the deployments that they are going to do, none of them will be manual deployments. They will go through the IAC, and the security controls are already baked in. So whatever services they deploy by default, they get all the security controls. So this is where basically we leveraged our architecture services as well as automation in Teach for America. In Johnson & Johnson, this is where we worked on the tools consolidation uh, service. They had like 15 plus different security tools, as I mentioned earlier, right? So being a enterprise organization, they have so many tools over the period, and they want to consolidate the number of security tools to minimize as much as possible. So again, this is an ongoing journey. So we got involved. We worked with the Johnson and Johnson security team and identified the tools that they are using and mapped the features that they are using from the tools to the Azure security tools. And then we started migrating. So as soon as we kind of got involved, within 4 months, we reduced the security tools count by 5. And then it's a continuous process. We are still continuously working with them to minimize the number of tools that they have, and then integrating with the Sentinel. So these are some of the use case studies that where we leveraged. We talked a lot about security. I know it's a vast area. We'll not be able to cover anything in detail. It's on everything is on a very high level, right? You might be wondering, okay, what next? Okay, I hear all this. So where do I start? So that's where we developed this Azure Security Assessment offer along with Microsoft. It's a free offer for anybody who wants to leverage this. It's a 3-day offer. What we will be doing, I'll go through what we are going to do as part of this security assessment. Feel free to leverage this offer. It's not going to cost anything. Okay. So why do we need to assess in the first place, right? We want to basically raise the level of cybersecurity awareness within the organization and want to alleviate the security risks, right? And we want to detect any vulnerabilities. If there are any existing vulnerabilities, we want to detect them early before they become, before hackers exploit those vulnerabilities. And then if there are any compliance requirements for organization, we want to validate the compliance is being properly followed or not. And then secure service configuration, right? If there are services that you are leveraging, if they are properly secured, or if there are any misconfigured services, we want to know upfront and then fix all of that, right? This is why we want to assess. That is where you can reach out to us. We can assess your environment and then provide you the guidance how to mitigate some of the gaps that we identified as part of the assessment, right? So what is our edge? What do we bring as part of this assessment, right? So we bring in a lot of industry benchmarks to look at if there are any specific requirements. This kind of meets your any kind of compliance requirements, right? Whether it's a CIS, NIST. We also have a new security benchmark. We kind of also have HIPAA and high trust. As I mentioned, we do a lot of work in healthcare industry, so we have those benchmarks as well. The second is defense in depth, right? As I mentioned earlier, we need to have the protection at each layer. So we go through this multi-tier approach across 7 security domains to see if every domain is properly secured or not. And our process is all automated. We do not need any of your employees' time. As long as we have access, it's all automated. We will just get your security configurations and provide the recommendations. We'll bring in Hanu IP, obviously the tool that I was talking earlier. It is in-house developed with all our IP built into it. It's a comprehensive approach. We look at 400 plus security controls to see if there are any gaps. And then it's customizable. We can leverage the tool to continuously look at, it's not one-time scan. We can continuously do the scan on a daily basis as part of our managed services. We could do this on a daily basis and give you this recommendations on a daily basis as well. So that is the edge that we are going to bring. And this is our assessment approach, right? As I said, the approach is very simple and it's just takes 3 days, 72 hours. You will have your results back. The first step is data aggregation. The setting up of the script or the tool, setup of the tool is the first. As long as we have access, a service principal with access to your environment, we will set it up. We fetch your existing security configuration, nothing else we will fetch. Once we get the data aggregation is done, we do the analysis against the industry benchmarks, identify the gaps, and we use that as like a base for our recommendations. Once the analysis is done, we'll make the recommendations. We'll provide you the executive summary, how your security posture is looking like, which domains have weak security controls, which domains have good security controls. We kind of categorize and let you decide which area you want to focus on first. Once you decide on the areas that you want to focus, you prioritize, then we will come up with a remediation roadmap for you. So this is the 3-day free assessment that we are offering. Please feel free to take this offer and reach out to us. We will take it forward. So this is one way, right? Security assessment. Even if you are still not convinced, even if you don't want to right away start with the security assessment, the other thing we can do is we can basically continue this conversation offline. Maybe we can do some workshops. Maybe we can dive deeper into some of the security areas which you might be interested, and then we can take this 3-day offer later. So we could do any of these two, either workshops, providing more workshops, deep dive discussions, or we can start with this free assessment as well.